Hey, it's Allie and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to do a recent reads video. It's been a long time since I've done a video where I talk about the books that I have read, especially because in May, I read one book and that was it. So I was able to catch up on some of my reading in June and I can't wait to talk to you about the books that I've read. So the first book that I have read is Happy Endings by Thane Kim Lam, and this is the ARC. It was sent to me by the publisher. And I got about, 75 to 80% of the way through this book, and I ended up DNFing it. I hate DNFing books, but I also don't want to waste my time reading a book that I'm not really enjoying, especially because if I do that, then I end up getting myself into a reading slump, and I just absolutely do not want to get into a reading slump. So I ended up DNFing this, and the main reason why I did that was because the dialogue in the book was just very cheesy and unrealistic. You could tell that the author wrote this kind of dialogue just to kind of progress the story to get to the spicy scenes. Now don't get me wrong, the spicy scenes in this book were very interesting and unique because this book is about a Vietnamese business owner and she owns an adult shop, and the male character in this book owns a southern food restaurant, like a comfort food restaurant. So definitely the spicy scenes are interesting just because of the fact that she is an owner of an adult store, but it just wasn't quite my thing. I prefer to have more plot than to have the spice into it. Now that's okay if you're only reading a book for the spice, but I definitely want more of a story with it. So I DNF'd it, but if this is kind of like what you like in a book, then go ahead and pick it up, but this book just wasn't my thing. The next books that I want to talk about is the Poison's Kiss duology by Brianna Shields, and the first book is Poison's Kiss, and the second book is Poison's Cage. Now, I picked this book up having no expectations about it, hadn't really heard about this duology at all from anybody, and I knew this book was a YA fantasy, and I believe the main character's name is Miranda, and she can kill people with a kiss. Her kiss is poisonous, and she's an assassin for a group of people that have been manipulating her whole life. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by these books. I gave this whole duology a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love this. I don't know why people aren't talking about it. It's so good. Maybe I'm a little late to the party. I don't remember when these came out. I got them as a backlist, but they came out in 2017. So it's been 4 years since the first book was originally published, but I really love this series. The ending of the whole duology was just so good. It's so hard to find a book, an ending to a series really, that you're going to enjoy. And I find I'm a little disappointed by the endings to some series that I read, but this book was so good. The ending was just the right amount of happy and sad, and it appeased everything. Like, I wasn't left with any questions. I had all my questions answered, and even though the ending wasn't completely happy, it was enough to satisfy me. So if you haven't read this duology yet and you're into fantasy, definitely pick this up and give it a try. All right, the next book I have is an adult romance. And before I tell you what it is, I also DNF'd this book. Now don't get me wrong, there are adult romances that I really love and that I've given 5 out of 5 stars to. I just haven't had much luck recently. But this book is The Perfect Date by Evelyn Lozada, and I was really hoping to love this story. I really liked, I think it was called The Good Luck Charm, and it was a adult romance about two people. It was kind of like a second chance romance, like they were friends when they were younger and then they dated and then they broke up and they came back together. But it had a professional hockey player in it, and I loved like the added sports to the story. And this book was about a mom who was trying to become a nurse and was working 2 jobs, and the main guy character in this story was a professional baseball player. So I was really excited about that. I liked like I said before, I liked the added sports element to the story. But I did not get that far into this book, and I just couldn't handle it. The main character in the book, the girl, her name is Angel Gomez. She just is a very negative person. She's really not very nice. She's mean to almost everyone that she interacts with, including the main character, who is Caleb the Duke Lewis. And it just, rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't want to read a book that was so negative. I'm reading adult romances because they're usually books that make you feel good, that just have like that happy ending to them, and just throughout the book just can make you laugh, smile, and sometimes a little sad. But this just was not that. It was so negative, not just about her treating other people, just things that were happening in her life as well. I think that the design on this front cover is a little bit deceiving as to like what the content is in here. But like I said, I got, I don't know, maybe like 80 pages in. So if you want, if it sounds like your thing, give it a chance. But I don't think I'll ever pick up this book and continue it. I just don't like the negative energy that's in this book. All right, the next books I want to talk about is the Shadow and Bone series. So we have Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising. And all of these are by Leigh Bardugo. And I finished this series in June, mid-June, I think. I started it in May. I wanted to get the first book read before I watched the season out on Netflix. This series has been on my TBR for a very long time. I thought I definitely need to pick it up before the season starts on Netflix, before I watch it. And when it comes to that kind of stuff, I can like not hold out and like not watch it for a long period of time. So I knew I wanted to have the book read before it even got onto Netflix. If you don't know what Shadow and Bone is about, it's in this fantastical world where there are these people called Grisha, and there's different kinds of Grisha. They have different magical abilities. And in Ravka, Grisha are in the Second Army to help fight and protect the country of Ravka from the surrounding countries. Alina grew up thinking that she was just a normal girl, but then she finds out when they're in a dire situation that she is actually a Grisha as well. Not only is she a Grisha, but she is the Sun Summoner. She has this magical Grisha ability that no other Grisha has, and they think that she can be the savior of Ravka. So I finished the first book, and I thought the first book was good. It was a good, solid, like YA fantasy, definitely like younger adult fantasy. This series was published in 2012, which kind of makes sense for like the story, but it definitely is for like younger audience, though it was still enjoyable to me. There were just some things in it that just didn't quite make sense. Like the main love story in this book between Alina and Mao, they just don't have chemistry. Now, I know there are people out there that are all for Melina. There were just times that it kind of like felt forced and uncomfortable. So that was something that definitely could have been improved on in the book. But definitely my favorite book out of this entire series is Ruin and Rising. This book was so good. There was major character development in here for a couple of characters. And of course, Nikolai, which is my favorite character, was in this book quite a lot. He was definitely the best character out of the entire series. He was just so funny and intriguing, but he also had that political side to him as well, which was very interesting. I don't want to give too much away because if you're gonna read it and you haven't yet, I don't want to give away any spoilers. But this series is definitely worth the read if you're interested in watching the TV series on Netflix, or if you've already watched it and you've enjoyed it, I would definitely pick this up and give it a try. The next book I have is Outlawed by Anna North. This is about a girl that's in a small town where every girl has to be married, and she's not really welcomed with open arms in this town until she's given birth to a child. But this is a Western, and when I picked this up, I had expected like gun shows and like some wrestling and just different things that you would expect out of a Western. And this did have a little bit of that in there, but it really wasn't the main part of the story, and I was just a little disappointed with this story. I was expecting so much more from it, and I was so excited because it was a female-led Western, which isn't very common. I was a little let down by the story. I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. It was on its way to 2 stars. It was that much of a disappointment to me for a while through the book, until about 75% of the way through, and then there was a scene that kind of bumped it up to 3 stars for me, but it's definitely on the lower end of 3 stars. Next up, I have Lore by Alexandra Bracken, and this is my Fairy Loot edition of this, if you are wondering, which I'm sure most of you know. But I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. In this book, we follow a girl named Lore. So Lore is an urban fantasy. It kind of reminds me of the Mortal Instruments, where these people that are fighting these other kinds of creatures to gain power, whereas in the Mortal Instruments, they're just killing these creatures to protect that urban world. But lore is all about Greek mythology. Every 7 years there is the Aegon, and the hunters, which are the descendants of the great warriors like Hercules and Perseus and Jason, they fight and try to kill the old gods like Apollo and Athena. And if they kill these old gods, they gain their power and become the new god, the new Apollo or the new Athena. But these different houses of these old heroes, so there's the house of Hercules, the house of the Perseids, they are in competition with each other. So not only are they trying to kill these gods to gain their power, but they also have to protect themselves from these other houses, because these other houses are murdering each other as well. Now, Laura in this story, all she wants out of this life, but she's brought back into it and she has to find her way out. So I was really excited about this book. This was one of my most anticipated releases for 2021. I was really excited to read this book. I love Greek mythology, and it was good. It just wasn't as good as I thought it would be. The best part of this book were all of the action scenes, all the fighting scenes. They were just so interesting and they kept you intrigued. And some of them were like several pages long. My sister mentioned how she thought that this would make a great movie just because of all of the action scenes in it. So that definitely was the best part of the book. Now, one part of the book that was definitely lacking was the romantic relationship. It just kind of felt forced. I wish we had gotten a little bit more background as how they got to where they were, or how they felt back then. And we did end up getting to see a little bit more between them later on in the book, but it just didn't feel like enough. I didn't really feel the chemistry between them, or how did they end up loving each other. There just could have been a lot more information in regards to their relationship. And there are parts in this book that were very slow paced, very hard to get through. Like, the action scenes were great, but all the between stuff really dragged on for me at points. It was really hard for me to get through this book. My sister absolutely loved this book though, and I thought, oh, maybe there's something. Like, if I keep reading this, maybe something will really intrigue me and grab me, and I'll really love this book too. And I kept pushing, I kept trying. I just didn't get that same feeling, but that's just me. So that just shows you how different people have different opinions on the books that they read. Next up, I have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this is my favorite book of the year so far. This book was fantastic. I could not put it down. This book is about Evelyn Hugo, who is a movie star, and a girl named Monique, who is a journalist, comes to her and interviews her to write her memoir. And as you can tell from the title, Evelyn Hugo had 7 husbands. And to everybody, her relationships were a mystery. So Monique is going to write a story from her point of view. So Evelyn Hugo isn't the most likable character, but you can definitely understand like her point of view and things, and like how and why she reacted to certain situations and how she handled certain situations. So it's definitely worth the read. I really enjoyed it. It was so good. I can't wait to read more of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. All right, the last book I have to talk about is Thirsty Mermaids by Kat Leigh, and this is a graphic novel. It's actually the first graphic novel that I have read other than my kids' children's graphic novels that I read. And I don't know if it's just me, or if like graphic novels just aren't my thing, or if it's this book. I really hate to say this because it is my first book, my first graphic novel book, I should say. But I just didn't like it. I think I gave it 2 stars. But the artwork in here I don't really like the artwork in this graphic novel. The story itself is just very, I don't know how to put it into words. It's just, I know it's supposed to be funny. I know this graphic novel is supposed to be funny. These mermaids talk sometimes. They specifically like want you to think that they're stupid. I love that they have different body positivity stuff in here, different body types, but they literally, the way that this author writes some of the blurbs for these characters, they want you to think these characters are stupid. These mermaids are stupid. I get that they're coming onto land for the first time and they don't know what things are called and they don't know how to handle situations. But just their personalities in general, like they want you to think that they're stupid. And I don't like that. I don't like that in the book. I don't like that they make these mermaids out to be stupid. So maybe it's just me. Maybe it's that I have never read a graphic novel before. Maybe I need to take another chance on another graphic novel and give that a try. Maybe this author's work just isn't my thing either. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read this book and what you thought of it, because I'm very interested to see what other people think about this book if they have read it. There were funny parts to it. The story in general just kind of sat wrong with me. So those are all the books that I have read recently. Like I said, let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. I'm really interested to see what you guys thought about some of these books, just like the graphic novel. Maybe you have a different opinion about a book and it'll give me a different view of that story. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon if you want to be notified when I post new content. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I'll see you next time. Bye.